I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, the Jewish community is taking a moment to pay tribute to one of the great Jewish philanthropists of the 20th and 21st century, Edgar M. Bronfman, who passed away last month at the age of 84. And of course, many of you have seen now the memorial service we've aired for you here on Shalom TV from Lincoln Center's Avery Fisher Hall. Many of you may also be familiar with the contributions Edgar Bronfman made as the longtime president of the World Zionist Congress and through the Jewish activities he initiated and supported through the Samuel Bronfman Foundation, which is a foundation he named after his father. But for some personal memories, we're pleased to be joined once again by a dear friend and someone who's made his own marvelous contribution to the Jewish life, the Executive Director of the American Jewish Committee, David Harris. David, thank you so much for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Mark.
David, you knew Edgar Bronfman. In what context did you work with him?
Yes, I knew him fairly well. Over the years, he had been active in Jewish life. He had taken on any number of important issues. He'll probably always be remembered for his critical role in the Soviet Jewry movement, a movement that I was also very familiar with. Also played a crucial role in exposing Kurt Waldheim, the UN Secretary General, who had managed to hide his past in the Second World War. And he will always be connected with the effort to try and bring some measure of justice in the case of the Swiss banks, which hoarded much of the money of both victims and survivors of the Second World War, and weren't particularly eager to return the money. So those were three major public battles in which Edgar Bronfman played a leading role with important results, Mark. And then I think no less important was his own self-education as a Jew, his growing realization through his adult years that there was much more to being Jewish than just the superficial or even the public campaigns. There was a depth to being Jewish that he began to engage with teachers and with spiritual leaders that led him to really treasure the richness of Jewish tradition and Jewish heritage and Jewish culture and Jewish faith, and that also led him to play a key role with Jewish young people. And in his later years, so much of his effort was devoted to Hillel and to meeting directly with young people on campuses and to trying to really inspire them in why he was such a proud Jew, and he hoped they would be as well.
David, did he ever work closely with you at the AJC?
We all worked in the same space, Mark. The Soviet Jewry movement was really a wonderful example. I wish there were many, many more, where Jewish groups worked closely together. Each group knew that alone, no group could unlock the door of the Soviet Union and bring out millions of Jews behind the Iron Curtain. That we had to work together, and we did work together. And it was such a joy, Mark, for those of us who at the end of the day really believe in the unity of the Jewish people, to be able to work together. And I wish today there were more examples and opportunities where mainstream leaders and mainstream organizations would really unite around common concerns and spend a little less time worrying about their own institutional selves.
Can you tell us anything about what he was like as a person? And again, you only had so much contact with him, but what was the tone of Edgar Bronfman?
I can only speak of my own contacts with him, and I can say that he always carried himself with considerable grace and dignity, and he was an elegant man. He was a man who had been brought up in privilege. He never hid it, but he also understood that privilege did not mean that he was therefore privileged to sit on the sidelines and reap the benefits of what his father, for example, had accomplished. I think what was remarkable about him was that he set out to establish his own persona, and he did it with a lot of determination. And I think especially admirable, Mark, was the fact that he chose to become a public face of the Jewish people. Not everyone, if one stops to think about it, who is Jewish and successful in the larger world, in the corporate world, in the business world, and elsewhere, makes that choice.
Yes.
To publicly identify himself and say to the world, yes, I'm a businessman. I'm also a proud Jew, and I want you to know that I'm a proud Jew. And young people, I want you too to know that I'm a proud Jew, and I want to share with you my excitement in being Jewish, and I'm going to write about it, and I'm going to speak about it. And if one thinks about it, if there were more people like Edgar Bronfman today who are successful in the larger business world, corporate world, you name it, who also publicly identify themselves Jewishly as he did, I think we'd be even better off, Mark, in expanding the reach of the Jewish people.
You know, David, I am so glad you expressed it that way, and you give me chills as you describe it. And I was so glad that I got the chance to talk to you because you bring that dimension, really, in your analysis in general. But I want to push you a little bit further here. You know, this is a man who was worth more than $2 billion. People know he was associated with, of course, his family company, which was bought out by Seagram's. Then he ran the Seagram's division here in the United States. He became a very, very wealthy man. In the Jewish tradition, David, there's nothing evil, intrinsically evil with money. The question is, to what extent do people who have money use it for the good of others, for the good of the social good in general? And obviously, as Jews, we hope that Jewish individuals who are very wealthy use some of their funds to support and to create and then to sustain Jewish organizations and Jewish activities. And that's what, Edgar Bronfman did. He used his wealth to make an enormous impact on Jewish life in so many ways, and you've mentioned some of them. Hillel organization is one. He created a youth organization in Israel that has been very successful and will forever be indebted to him. But then you speak, David, about his commitment to Judaism. He wrote about it, as you said. He wrote books about the Jewish tradition. And it's interesting when you go back and look at his early life. He was raised in a somewhat observant home, although he went to a school where he was not an observant Jew at all. And so you're describing this evolution of his own in which he wanted, in so many ways, to encourage younger people, the next generation, to be committed to Judaism. Now, in some way, David, that reflects your own commitment. But I wish you'd amplify that a little bit more about how you feel Edgar Bronfman, as a very wealthy, successful, and philanthropic Jew, wasn't simply involved in civic and cultural activities, but cared really about Judaism and our involvement in the Jewish tradition and the future of Judaism and the Jewish people.
Mark, as you speak, I'm reminded of one of my great political heroes of the 20th century, Winston Churchill, who once said, we make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give.
Lovely.
And I'm not sure that Winston Churchill ever met Edgar Bronfman. He may not have. But I think he had people like Edgar Bronfman very much in mind. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, and now we remember Edgar, and in a way, tragically speak of him in the past tense, but he made a life by what he gave. And what he gave was both the largesse of philanthropy, but also the largesse of his spirit, the spirit of being a proud Jew. And again, all of us need role models in life. Young people do, and frankly, not so young people need role models too. And when you see someone who's so successful in the business world, really at the top of the game, and yet carves out a big piece of his life to say, that's really important. And sure, there are lots of civic activities that come with that, but another big chunk of my life is to be Jewish and to do Jewish and to live Jewish and to model Jewish and to inspire Jewish. Then I think you have this exquisite combination. And again, I repeat myself because to me the need is so urgent. We need more people like Edgar Bronfman who span those worlds, who serve as role models to so many for their success in their professional lives and activities, and who at the very same time are modeling what I think is exemplary behavior to others by saying, don't only see me as Edgar Bronfman, head of Seagram's. Don't only see me as Edgar Bronfman, son of Samuel Bronfman. I want you to see me as Edgar Bronfman, the Jew. And I want you to understand that for me, it's the most enriching, ennobling part of my life to have discovered what that really means.
Yes.
And you too can find it. It's not for the privileged. It's for anyone. It's for anyone who carves out a little time in their lives and says, give me a Jewish book. Find me a Jewish teacher. Expose me to Jewish experience and let me build on it. And that's what he did. So I think, to me, of all the contributions he made, and there were many, as I said, in Soviet Jewry and exposing Kurt Waldheim and in challenging the Swiss banks, but above all, I think he created a model of what it can mean to be successful in the larger world and to be a proud Jew and to face the world as both, not as one, as both. And I hope there will be others who are inspired by his example and follow suit, because the impact on the Jewish people and our destiny will be profound if we can find precisely such people.
That's beautifully, beautifully said. Incidentally, put one more aspect of his work into context for us, David. He virtually resurrected the World Jewish Congress and made it a major force on the international Jewish scene. There may be viewers right now who are unfamiliar with the work that the World Jewish Congress does. Can you spend a moment putting that in context for us?
Well, it's hard for me because I never worked for the World Jewish Congress. So I'm not the one to speak about the organization per se. I can only note that when he was its chairman, and it was a long period as chairman, these issues were being pursued, the issues of Soviet Jewry and Swiss banks and Kurt Waldheim and so forth, and he was at the helm.
Yes.
And that was during a run of many years. It ended. He left. And there was quite a bit of media attention to what happened at the World Jewish Congress. Unfortunately, there were some difficult moments in the life of the organization.
Yes.
On the professional side, they did not touch him per se, but his tenure as chair ended, and the organization has now moved on. But his legacy is enshrined and embedded in Jewish history. And again, at the end of our lives, what we leave is a good name, we hope. That's the most we can aspire to, a good name, a name that's made a difference. And Edgar Bronfman left a good name, a life that was both examined and lived well, and that made a difference. And again, to quote Churchill, he made a life where he gave, and he will be remembered for what he gave and not what he got.
Again, you say it perfectly, and I think you're 100% correct. Look, he's not the only individual on the world Jewish stage with considerable funds and who goes out of his way to be generous with them and to sustain Jewish life. But he was a giant among giants, and the world is less for his passing, and I think he'll be remembered only for good. And I'm very, very pleased that you put him in context. David, while I have you here, I want to sort of change topics for one moment and ask you for some perspective on another issue that's in the news right now. There is some discussion of a boycott of West Bank goods. And David, in general, there's this sort of attitude that if you don't boycott products made in Israel proper inside the Green Line, but you only boycott products that are over the Green Line being created on the West Bank, in some way it is more acceptable for a boycott to do that than not, and that in some way it seems fashionable among some who are trying to delegitimize the state of Israel and who blame the West Bank and settlers for the lack of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. The company specifically that I have in mind right now is SodaStream, started by Daniel Birnbaum, that does extraordinary work on the West Bank. What's interesting to me, David, is this company employs more than 1,000 Palestinians, has built a mosque on their own grounds so that Palestinians have a place to worship. And as someone once said, if a non-Jewish organization had done what SodaStream had done on the West Bank, they would be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. But at the moment, SodaStream is being attacked and a boycott is being organized against them simply because they're a successful Israeli company on the West Bank. I don't need you to speak about SodaStream in particular, but I do want you to spend a moment with us giving us any of your own feelings about this attempt to boycott West Bank Israeli companies as opposed to companies that are in Israel proper. How do you feel about it? Is it a distinction that you feel is one of merit?
I think it's not one of merit, Mark, not at all. Look, there's an ongoing peace process. Let's be clear firstly. There's an ongoing peace process that's being led by Secretary of State John Kerry. Some people are more hopeful, other people are more skeptical. It's been going on, though, for many months. The Secretary has been there 10 times. There have been talks directly between Israelis and Palestinians and indirectly. And the focus for those who really genuinely are committed to trying to advance prospects for peace and a two-state agreement and better relations between Israelis and Palestinians are missing the whole picture here, Mark. They should be focusing on investment, not divestment. They should be focusing on creating more opportunities like SodaStream, where more Israelis and Palestinians come together, interact, get to know each other, create more employment opportunities for, in this case, Palestinians as well, boost their economy. All of these things can contribute to an environment of peace. Number one. Number two, I've always found a certain hypocrisy in the boycott movement. And the hypocrisy comes from the fact that of all the nations in the world, and there are, I think, Mark, 193 UN member states, and of all the conflict situations in the world, and there are dozens, just open any newspaper on any day, the only one that seems to occupy, if not obsess, these folks is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as if there were nowhere else in the world that captured their attention. And I have to ask myself why. At least be consistent. Otherwise, you're simply hypocritical. Be consistent. If you're concerned about every conflict situation in the world, apply the same standards. But then remember something else. Israel has tried and tried again and tried a third time and tried a fourth time to make peace. Going back to the 1947 partition plan and going straight through Ehud Barak's efforts and Ehud Olmert's efforts, all well documented. This is not AJC speaking. This is history speaking. So to punish the Israelis for the absence of peace and to punish Palestinians who want to work and earn a living and help their families, and to punish the peace process by denying these points of contact, would the boycotters take the same approach if the company were jointly Israeli-Palestinian owned? What if it was owned 51% Israeli, 49% Palestinian, or vice versa? And what if the company also does business and manufacturing in Israel proper? Do they then boycott the entire company, a small percentage of the company? What they're really doing, Mark, at the end of the day, is trying to punish Israel writ large. That's what they're trying to do. They're not advancing peace. As I said, the program should be investment, not divestment, to help Israelis and Palestinians develop economically, get to know each other better, create jobs, and help build a climate of peace. Peace is not a piece of paper, Mark. I mean, it could be, but that's not an enduring peace. Peace is when people get to know each other, work together, rub shoulders together, overcome differences, and at least respect each other. And the more we can promote those kinds of opportunities, the further along we'll be in the peace process. This kind of effort retards the peace process. And finally, bravo to Scarlett Johansson.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you for your listeners and your viewers, on our AJC Facebook page, which is at AJC Global, I don't think we've ever had a better response from our nearly 40,000 Facebook fans on the AJC Global page than the picture of Scarlett Johansson and her association with Defending SodaStream, this company that you described, Mark.
Yes.
So there's a lot of feeling out there about this, and I invite your viewers to go to our Facebook page at AJC Global, see what's up there on this subject, like it, share it, and become part of the AJC community as we take on these battles there and around the world.
Good for you, David. Good for you. You know, we haven't spoken also since the ASA academic boycott. And David, in some way, I worry that what was limited for a long time in Europe, this boycott movement that seemed to just spread through Europe like wildfire, it seems to be gaining a certain degree of traction in the United States. And at the same time, I have been very heartened by the way in which so many major academic institutions in America and major university presidents and other leading academicians rejected the ASA academic boycott loudly and clearly. But I want to know from your perspective, to what extent do you fear that this BDS movement is making inroads in the United States?
Well, firstly, if you allow me, Mark, I think the BDS movement is BS.
Good for you.
I think that the so-called successful effort at the ASA, the American Studies Association, may have given a brief victory to the radical voices that led the effort against Israel, but in many ways, the effort has also backfired.
Yes.
Because what it did is, and you suggested it, Mark, is it triggered this massive wave of hundreds and hundreds of presidents of major colleges and universities across the country rejecting what they did, reviewing their college's own relationship to the ASA, in some cases severing the relationship entirely, and affirming the principle of full engagement and academic freedom between their universities and the State of Israel and its universities. And AJC has been very active in this realm because we've had a lot of well-developed relationships with universities and their leaders. We've had the privilege of taking many of them to Israel through AJC's Project Interchange. And our answer to the ASA movement is not just to try and reject it, it's to actually turn it around and deepen the relationship between Israeli and American universities. My goodness, the opportunities for faculty exchanges, student exchanges, research and development programs. Here in New York, the best example right now is what's going on between Cornell and Technion. Two great universities, Cornell University here in the U.S. and Technion, Israel's MIT, if you will, from Haifa, have joined together to create this extraordinary state-of-the-art science and technology center on Roosevelt Island. It's a multi-billion, with a B, dollar project with about 20 buildings planned in the campus. It's electrifying New York and catapulting it to the front ranks of science and technology. And what it's also doing is it's showing the American people the value of Israel beyond political conflict. It's Technion as part of the New York science and technology scene, part of the American science and technology scene. And our response to the boycott, Mark, is to encourage precisely more of the Cornell-Technion partnerships as the best answer. Israel's got a lot to offer American universities. American universities pride themselves on academic freedom and openness. We want to create more partnerships, more marriages, more linkages between universities for the benefit of mankind. That's our ultimate response to groups like the ASA, which went off the tracks.
David, you continue to do fabulous work. The AJC does fabulous work. I'm always thrilled to be able to present you to our audience. And we talked a moment ago about the wonderful contribution Edgar Bronfman made, and it will be remembered forever. Some of the things he's done and he did and will be remembered for, you continue to do every single day. I encourage all of our viewers to visit the AJC Global website and see some of the things you're doing, including the statement by Scarlett Johansson. And as always, I am very grateful for a moment of your time. Thank you very much, David.
Thanks to you, Mark, and thanks to Shalom TV for the key role you play in our lives.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Be well. David Harris, the Executive Director of the American Jewish Committee. You've been seeing our coverage of the memorial tribute to Edgar Bronfman here on Shalom TV. We'll be showing it to you again. Again, here you have a man who had enormous wealth and used a great deal of that wealth for social good, and that is the Jewish model. There's never an attempt to say that money in and of itself is intrinsically evil. The question is, what do you do with your money? We encourage everyone to be as successful as they possibly can be. I hope every one of you watching is as financially successful as you can possibly be, and then I hope you are as philanthropic, as generous, that you engage in tzedakah, both in terms of dollars out of your pocket and also time and energy out of your lives. And Edgar Bronfman really reflected the finest values of tzedakah in the Jewish community. And permit me a personal note. In 2008, Edgar Bronfman wrote a book entitled Hope, Not Fear, A Path to Jewish Renaissance. And in that book, there's a passage which moved me deeply, in which he spoke of the Jewish future. And this was years before the Pew Report. I want to share with you this little passage written by Edgar Bronfman. He wrote, "We are in danger of losing the religion and culture that have helped so many to lead better lives and to better the lives of so many others. It's not too late to act, but we must act now. What we can do is push against the tide and bring new life to Judaism. The answer has to be a new kind of Jewish education. We must invest time, money, and energy in Jewish education. We must also take a hard look at what we are doing and ask where energy and resources need to be redirected." And when I read this passage from Edgar Bronfman's Hope, Not Fear, A Path to Jewish Renaissance, I felt he was affirming exactly what Shalom TV is all about, using the power and the reach of television to push against the tide, to bring new life to Judaism and the Jewish people, and to use television as a means of educating, informing, and inspiring Jews and members of other faith communities as well, who learn from and enjoy Shalom TV, so that Shalom TV energizes engagement and commitment to appreciate more the beauty of the Jewish tradition, the Jewish community, and the state of Israel, and really Jewish life as a whole. And so in some small but profound way, Edgar Bronfman also helped us here at Shalom TV create the unique programming you see here each and every day. And all of us at Shalom TV, especially I, feel privileged to be able to bring you special moments of tribute to the memory and contribution of a truly great Jew of our time, Edgar M. Bronfman, Sr. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.